Good afternoon, morning, evening, whenever you're watching this. We're continuing in the series, All the Leaves, and this one's called Nothing But Leaves. So it says in the New Testament that Jesus came to a fig tree that had no figs, and Jesus cursed it because it had nothing but leaves. Matthew says he spoke to the tree and said, "May you never bear fruit again." And his followers asked Jesus, "How did it wither so quickly?" And then Jesus said to them, "If you have faith and don't doubt, you can do what was done to this tree and even to mountains and have them removed." And he tells them they can receive when they have that kind of faith. But in Mark, Jesus sees the fig tree and he was hungry and saw that it had nothing but leaves and he looked for fruit. But then it says it wasn't even the season for figs, so why was Jesus looking for them? Jesus again cursed the tree, saying no one would ever eat fruit from it again. And again, Jesus said after that to have faith, and they could tell a mountain to be thrown into the sea, to ask in faith, and it will be yours when you pray. Now on to Luke, and again we read the story of the fig tree, and it's in a man's vineyard, and it has no fruit. In fact, 3 years it's had no fruit. So he said to cut it down because it was using up soil. But the vineyard caretaker here asked for 1 more year to dig and fertilize it before cutting it down, and then the story ends. I don't know about you, but this is some strong language in this story and a strong reaction to a fig tree with nothing but leaves. And then the last tale seems to leave us hanging for an outcome. What was the caretaker doing, and was he given another year or not? So remember how we said in another devo that the fig trees were a symbol of wealth among the people and that people sat under them? So they had been given much when they had a fig tree. And then remember how we said that people set up groves where they went to worship idols among trees of their own planting? Shortly after the story of the fig tree mentioned in Luke, Jesus goes into Jerusalem and mourns because he wanted to gather them like a chick gathers her young, but they weren't willing. And he states that the people will not see him again until they say, "Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." It was high time for the people to realize the wealth of the grace of God extended toward them, and if not, the time was coming to an abrupt end. So when he's looking for fruit in the one tree, even though it's not the season for figs, what is that all about? Could it be that he's looking for evidence that there ever was figs among the showy leaves? And we see that years have gone by without fruit, where leaves have appeared over and over again with no fruit. And yet these showy leaves, nothing but leaves, were taking up root systems and soil and not responding to the caretaker by bearing fruit. It seems that nothing but leaves indicates a story to remind us that we cannot refuse God's grace and look away from his wonder and then expect to thrive. In fact, we're inviting sure destruction when we do that. So the last devo about beautiful leaves, the king took every bit of the growth and success and attributed all of it to his own doing instead of giving praise and honor to God. And that was also struck down, just like the fig tree in these stories. But let's not forget what Jesus said after he cursed these showy fig trees that only had nothing but leaves. He told them to have faith and not doubt, and they would be able to speak to mountains and cast them into the sea. Those self-preserving trees were good for nothing but death, but trees that bear fruit, well, they're good for great things. In other words, transformation through acknowledgement of our need for a Savior results in amazing things, not just fruit on our trees, but beautiful, brilliant leaves, and where great things take place. Faith grows, doubts cease, and mountains are moved. It seems harsh that Jesus would just curse a tree with no fruit, but these trees were made to bear fruit just like we are. And it seems they were given ample care and time, much as we are daily, fed and led by the hand of God. And all through the Bible, we're told to praise the one from where our blessings flow. And when we do, my gosh, faith arises, our mouths open, mountains are moved into the sea. But you know what? That can be confusing as well. In other verses, we read about mountains falling into the sea, and it sounds scary. But we're not supposed to fear when mountains fall. But yet here, after the nothing but leaves discovery, Jesus tells his followers to speak to mountains to go to the sea. One is an act of nature that brings destruction when mountains slide into the sea, but this second one is an act of faith that brings freedom when we speak to the mountain to be moved. That's the difference between a tree that bears fruit among its leaves and one that has nothing but leaves. One is a sitting duck waiting to be cursed, to wither up and die, those apart from belief in a Savior that loves them. The other is a force to be reckoned with, a fruitful tree with faith that can control the mountains and move them out of the way. So it's really up to us. Will we acknowledge God in our lives and give Him room to prune us so that we can bear fruit and move mountains? Or will we stand among the groves of our own planning and efforts, taking the glory for ourselves and slide with the mountains down into destruction? It's a sobering story told over and over again about this fig tree with nothing but leaves, but it's worth noting and thinking about so we won't be found among those seeking to satisfy their hunger, but having nothing to offer others when they come, nothing but leaves.